Welcome. For all those who might not know me, my name is Helen. I am one of the pastors here. Me and Travis are the pastors holding down the fort here this morning. But I have the great joy of kicking off this new sermon series this morning. So for the next several weeks, we are going to be looking at the book of Proverbs. And I'm going to be honest with you. Full transparency, I understand I'm a pastor. I love the Bible a lot. Proverbs is the book that I skim. I don't go there too often, only because so much of it I just see places. And because I see it all the time, I feel like I don't have to go there. It appears on coffee mugs, on throw pillows, on like the dish towels in different gift stores. And so whenever I see it, my eyes just kind of glaze over and just nothing is happening up here. So that's my true confession for this morning. And that's a huge bummer because Proverbs is full of wisdom and I really should look at it more. It's not just surface level quips and pithy statements. They're not things to be weaponized or used against us. These are real nuggets of wisdom, and we should be looking for them. We should be finding them. It's the kind of ancient wisdom that reminds us that God is always present and working in the details of our lives. So in that light, I want to invite all of us to take a step back and take a fresh look at one of those more overplayed Proverbs, if you will. Proverbs 3, 1 through 6. It was interesting. I went on a walk this week, and I was thinking about these verses, and I realized I couldn't even pinpoint why they loom so large in my head. Like, I can't remember any specific sermons on it from when I was a kid. We didn't have these cross-stitched in my house. I don't know where it came from, but when I hear these words, like they're there, and I'm just like, oh yeah, this is the main Bible one. And then again, I kind of glaze over and I don't know what to do with it. They've just kind of taken a life of their own whenever I hear the trust the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding, and all your ways submit to him and he will make your path straight. I hear that in my head. I'm like, yeah, sure. So I don't want to assume that I know your experience with these words, but when I hear them, I don't always feel comfort. They bring up weird old thoughts, and they leave me feeling kind of gross, if I'm being honest. Like I need to stop asking questions, leaning not on my own understanding. Like I have to not ask questions, I have to not learn more. I can't question anything. I need to submit my free will. I need to stop seeking after wisdom. And if I don't, my life will be bad. And so maybe you're like me, maybe you have a negative association with these verses, or maybe you've heard them one too many times, or maybe this is the first time you've ever heard them. Whatever your relationship is with these verses, I want to invite us all to listen to this wisdom anew. So hopefully when you came in, you were given a piece of paper that looks like this. If you didn't, if you could just raise your hand and we will have someone who will bring one to you. Perfect. Yeah, so just keep your hand up and one will make its way to you. Even if you're a kid and you're in the room, we want everyone to have one. So what we are going to do with this, though, we are going to engage in a spiritual practice called Lectio Divina. So Lectio Divina it's also called holy reading. We are all invited into this practice of holy reading, holy listening, not for the pursuit of answers, but so that we can, not for answers that we can kind of file away and just like the check mark to try to create that perfect life, or to build our book of morals, but instead so we can accept God's invitation into a constant relationship with him. So I'm going to read this passage for you this morning as we do this, a total of 3 times. We're going to go 2 at the start and then 1 at the very end of the message. The first time I read them, I'm going to invite you just to close your eyes and let the words soak into your heart, into your spirit. You can take a couple deep breaths if you want to. If you have a physical Bible, you're also welcome to look at it there, but I wanted to make sure that everyone had a physical copy for this morning. So hear now these words. My child, do not forget my teaching, but let your heart keep my commandments. For length of days and years of life and abundant welfare they will give you. Do not let loyalty and faithfulness forsake you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Then you will find favor and high regard in the sight of God and of people. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not rely on your own insight. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. I want to encourage you now, for just a moment, to take some deep breaths, close your eyes if it's helpful, and focus on drawing close to God and your relationship with God this morning. And now, as I read it a second time, I want you to listen for a specific word or phrase that stands out to you. Just something that sticks out. You don't need to know why or have a reason. Just listen for a word or phrase that feels important to you. If it's helpful, you can underline the word on the paper in front of you. But hear now these words. My child, do not forget my teaching, but let your heart keep my commandments, for length of days and years of life and abundant welfare they will give you. Do not let loyalty and faithfulness forsake you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Then you will find favor and high regard in the sight of God and of people. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not rely on your own insight. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. Again, just take a few moments. Is there a word or phrase that stands out to you? Something that you're just kind of stuck on? Take a few minutes and just sit with that phrase. As we continue this morning, I want to invite you to hold that word or phrase in your minds, to ponder what it is God is inviting you to with it, to do holy listening, holy pondering as I speak this morning. And if that means you zone out on the words that I'm saying, that's okay. I'm not going to mind. This passage in particular is full of phrases that are well known. Phrases that we've slapped on coffee mugs and t-shirts. But often we boil it down to just verse 5 or maybe 3 through 6 if we have a lot of space. And when we do that, we can tend to slip into a transactional mindset. This is a book of wisdom after all, and so it tracks that there would be key nuggets of wisdom, some secret formula to find. And so the path that we need, there might be like a path that we think we need to find, and if we can find it and follow it, our life will be perfect. We'll be set. And if we keep these commandments, if we read our Bibles and bind them to our necks, if we let go and let God, if we just pray hard enough and keep our mouths shut when things are confusing or difficult, then we will earn God's favor and life will become easy. Our troubles will end and our paths will be made straight. It sounds so good, right? But don't get me wrong, reading the Bible is great. It's awesome, fully recommend. Praying is great. Trusting God is for sure always the goal. but these things aren't supposed to be used as bargaining chips. They aren't stickers on a star chart that you can cash in for a prize at the end when you think you've earned enough. And conversely, you don't get sick or fail or fall on hard times, maybe financially or otherwise, because your prayers weren't quite up to snuff. This isn't a transaction. But this is a trap that I used to fall into a lot when I was younger, if I'm being honest. Bad things would happen, and I would worry that it was because I had gotten a little lax in my spiritual life, or that it was some divine punishment for forgetting to say, bless you, when someone sneezed. That was a really big concern when I was a kid. Or lying to my brother about who it was that my mom had really asked to do the dishwasher. Spoiler alert, it was probably almost always me, but I didn't do it very often. I would feel this flash of guilt when something bad happened, and I would just dive straight into bargaining mode and try to make these deals with God and say, if I do this, the next time maybe you can make it better. Maybe next time it won't do this if I just do this. I promise I'll do this. And so when things went well, when my mom would make it through like a crazy surgery or something, I would have people ask me how exactly it was I prayed, if there was some special angle or special phrase that I used, which looking back on it is a really weird thing to ask a 12-year-old, but people thought I was so good at praying when things went well. And so that didn't help me get out of this mindset where I was like, well, I did pray. Did I do it right somehow? I don't think so. I was 12. Who knows? The truth is no. That's not how this works. It wasn't that I was so good at reading the Bible that God would do these things for me. The ancient wisdom here, it's not a formula. It's not something we can learn. It's not about gaining enough answers for everything in your life to fall into place so that everything is just good forever. Instead, the wisdom is pointing us towards a deeper relationship with God. It shows us how to grow closer, how to make God a part of every aspect of our lives. And that's not something we can just learn and be like once and done. This passage starts out with a parent telling their child, listen to me. Remember what I am saying. Let your heart know these truths. When we read these first few words, we can really hear that exasperated parent just trying to get their kids to really listen, right? But again, I don't think these words are a formula. So I don't believe that Solomon meant to imply that this kid would live to be 120 years old with a healthy stock portfolio if he could just listen. Right? No, I think he meant that if you do these things, you will be living life to its fullest. And there's that phrase that Jesus said in John when about what Jesus came to give us. He said he came to give life that is full and good. And I think Solomon's referring to that same thing, a life that is full and good, not a life that is perfect. I don't think that Solomon is asking us to be mindful of our transactions with God or else face the losses. No, I think the deeper wisdom that Solomon is inviting us into is an invitation to step deeper into our relationship with God, to step closer, that our motivation in life would not be trying to avoid a threat of impending doom or just trying to strive after the promise of physical riches, but instead that the real richness is a closeness with God, the God who created us, who created everything, for us to actively engage with our faith, to treat this like a real relationship that we need to put effort and time into and participate in if we want it to flourish. The shallow view of this invitation is to think that we are in it for the increased lifespan and the riches. The deeper view requires us to take another look at the words that are being used here. So go ahead and use your Bible or the paper that I gave you, and I want to invite you to physically underline the words. And I want you to underline the words abundant welfare, or other translations may use the phrase peace and prosperity if you're using a physical Bible. The struggle with these words is that they fail to capture the fullness of the original Hebrew. This Bible wasn't written in English. But welfare does come pretty close, I'm going to be honest. It's a closer attempt than just peace and prosperity, but it's still lacking a little bit. So over in the margin or down below, I want you to write shalom and life. In Hebrew, there is a depth to words that we simply can't quite capture with a one-to-one translation. Peace isn't a deep enough word. Abundant also isn't quite right. And yes, shalom does mean peace and health, but it also means wholeness and completeness and perfection. Shalom implies that everything is being brought together, a total rightness, that everything is working together as it should. This isn't a flowery, 70s peace and love sort of peace. This isn't the quiet peace of swallowed arguments. This is a true peace, a shalom, a peace, a wholeness, an abundance, where everything is working together for the good, for each other's good, where there isn't just a lack of conflict, but a universal flourishing. I used to go on these kayaking-based camping trips where we would lay down a huge tarp on the beach of an uninhabited island in the Puget Sound, and it was so peaceful. It's as free from any sound of man-made sound as you can get, but it wasn't the kind of peace that you might imagine. Because the truth is the world at peace is still really loud. There are animals, and there are bugs and birds, and the scuffle of leaves and waves crashing along the rocks, and wolves howling in the distance, and raccoons that want to attack us. There is an abundance of life, things that are in motion, that are moving, that are living their fullest lives in harmony with one another. Peace doesn't just mean quiet. Peace means that everyone and everything gets to thrive. So what Solomon is inviting us to is not to prosperity and shallow peace, but wholeness and life itself. This is a huge invitation. This isn't about everything going well for us personally as individuals, but an invitation into a richer way of doing life. And if we do this, Solomon says that love or loyalty and faithfulness will follow us throughout our lives. This is a deep commitment, a deep relationship. It is an invitation to a fierce love, a covenantal love, and a sense of dependability and integrity. We are asked to never forget this deep love and faithfulness, to never forget that we are being pursued by God and that we are invited to honor in turn that same covenantal relationship by fiercely loving others. We are invited to pursue relationships with others with integrity and with a fullness. It's not about a grumbly kind of peace where you just shut your mouth to keep the peace, and it isn't the peace and quiet a frustrated parent might ask for on a long car ride. It's deeper than that. It is everything operating as it should. As a part of our covenant with God, as we live into that relationship, it expands to embrace the fullness and richness of life all around us. To approach the world and those we disagree with or disapprove of with love and integrity. To seek even their flourishing. That this attitude would soak deep into the core of who we are. In fact, he says to this kid, because again, he's dropping all of these truth bombs on a child, to bind these things on a tablet and to hang them around his neck. And to the kids in the room, I really hate to break it to you. Solomon, King of Wisdom, is not giving you access to unlimited screen time. He's not saying you get a tablet all the time. But instead, in ancient Hebrew culture, people would write down certain truths, and they would put them on a piece of paper and wrap it up in a piece of leather and hang them on a cord around their foreheads or on their hands. And in this case, Solomon's saying, you place this one around your neck. To physically tie them to their bodies so they can't forget. So it's a physical symbol of these things that they are living out. In ancient Hebrew culture, the neck represented life. So by doing this, by hanging it around your neck, it's a reminder of God's deep love and dependability. It's the source of life, right? Around our neck and above our hearts. It's the source of life, and that's where you keep it. So these words hang right there to the source of your life. So that is the mindset. This way of being, this closeness with God would become an inescapable part of who you are. That you would be so deep into your relationship with God that you would move through the world with the same appreciation for the wholeness of a thriving world, that you would seek the flourishment of all that you meet, and that these things would become a part of your very being, a part of your life's blood. And that when we do this, we will find favor, we will find honor with God and with people. And finding honor is a bit of a funny concept, I'll admit, here in a Western context, where we tend to lean more towards blame and guilt rather than shame and honor. But in this context, the one where Solomon's speaking, the author is presupposing and understanding that human identity is formed through two fundamental relationships, with God and with other people. Ancient Israel was a shame and honor culture, so your honor was a public commodity to be openly talked about or taken away by a community. So what Solomon is saying here is that when you base your human identity on your relationship with God and your relationship with other people, if you live this out, if you live to seek the betterment of others, if you strive for a world where all can flourish, if you try to seek out the betterment of others, then you will be granted honor. People won't be able to help but see that you are there for the good of all. So it is wise to act as such. And conversely, it would be foolish to ignore your relationship with God and others to seek after only your own growth and to ignore the good of others, because that would lead to shame and foolishness. And Solomon is trying to raise up wise people. In verse 5, we see those familiar words, trust in the Lord with all your heart, or in all your ways in some translations. With all your heart or in all your ways refers to how we act in a world full of diversity. How are you going to behave yourself around others when you run into someone that isn't operating on the same wavelength as you? If they differ, if they're wrong, will you still treat them with justice and righteousness? Solomon is saying that it is our responses here on this earth that determine if we have truly entered into a relationship with God. And now I want to be clear, doing justice is not the same thing as having a relationship with God. But you cannot have a relationship with God without also doing justice. These things are inseparable. You can't have a relationship with God without having a heart that seeks after love and justice and mercy. Trusting in God means trusting in God's ways and in how God moves. And God moves with justice. God moves with love. God moves towards the discarded and the disenfranchised. We see this when we read what Jesus got up to on his limited time here on earth. When we see who he partied with, when we see who he intentionally hung out with, right? He hung out with those people that people don't want to associate with. And what I have to believe, what I have to trust, is that God knows more than us, that Jesus knows more than us, and that God's insights are better than our insights. That we are stepping out of this world of ordinary human knowledge and understanding of the way things work, and trusting that if God says do justice, love, and mercy, that it is for good. It is for the good of all, even if we can't quite see it yet. So in verse 6, it goes on to say that if you do all of this, if you live to see the fullness of life brought down to earth, that God will make your paths straight. And that sounds awesome. What a prize. Solomon is granting us the keys to easy street. Just kidding, that is clearly not what's happening. That's just not what's going on. I have loved living here this past year. On the whole, the East Coast experience has been great. But whenever people ask me how I've liked it, if there's been anything odd, I always have the same complaint. And I'm going to stick to this forever. The roads. What is happening here? Why are they so twisty? I don't even care about the potholes, but why don't we have straight lines? I can't get to the airport in a normal way. So what I have for you as a lovely example is the West Coast. This is Washington. This is how you get from my parents' house to the airport. All right? So essentially, to get from, if you're going 60 miles, it takes 60 minutes, and you're going on a straight line with no exits or transfers. That's what it means. Minutes are miles, always. It's a thing, I-5 is a thing of beauty. It's going to go from up into Canada, down through Mexico. Fantastic. So basically, everything of importance is right off it. I don't know if you can tell because you don't know these cities, but nothing happens off of I-5. It's wilderness. We don't go there. It's a straight line down the whole coast. Nothing happens off of it. When you go to the airport here, you can see it's like a variation of like 4 minutes. You can also might see that there are no exits. And if there are the alternate routes available, you don't go through a city. You're not going through a back road. There are no weird things to try to get to I-90. You don't do that. In fact, I-90 is in this picture, and you don't have to do that. You get a transfer with a merge from one freeway to the next with a long on-ramp and a good off-ramp. It's so nice. Anyways, straight roads are great. That's the moral of the story. I miss them, and I encourage you all to write letters to get them here. The thing about straight roads, though, is that they are also full of people, right? You don't get a straight road for just a few people. The reason that they can justify taking up so much room and cutting straight through so many things is because they are efficient at getting a lot of people to where they need to go. It wouldn't make sense to send all these commuters skittering out on a circuitous side road. I was talking to my dad a couple weeks ago on his way home. I was bored, so I decided to track him on my phone as he was driving home, because I can do that. And he tried to take a shortcut that Waze told him would beat the traffic. It designed it just for him, except it also told a ton of other people to take this very special route just for him. So I watched him for like 45 minutes trying to go like 3 miles and winding through a path of just zigzags. It cut through parking lots. It was zigzagging around hospitals, but it was the time when all the nurses are changing shifts. It was a nightmare. He couldn't go anywhere. Straight roads, though, are efficient. They get you moving. You don't want to be messing with all of that, because straight roads are for the masses. The little windy roads, they're not for everyone. They are busy and full of people with different thoughts and ideas, and frankly, different concept of how blinkers work, but we accept that. I believe that when Solomon says that when we do adopt these characteristics, when we base our identity on deepening our relationship with God and with others, God isn't just going to silo us out onto a road that has been made straight for us. We don't get that. No, God is going to say that when we do these things, we merge onto one great road, right? Like our name and our symbols, pretty good there. We're going to merge onto this big, great road, going with people who are on their journeys, moving in harmony with one another, anticipating and meeting their needs. They might have different thoughts, but we're all going to be moving in the same direction. We're going to be acting with justice and mercy and humbleness as we move forward together. So friends, while I do think this passage belongs on a coffee mug, it's not for the reason that we so often think of. We are being invited away from an individual approach and into a life full of rich human responses to the divine standards, to a life full of rich relationships where our knowledge of God is going to be revealed in our responses to things. When it's revealed in our human responses to the divine standards of justice and righteousness, when we seek a right relationship with God, God helps us to heal our relationships with those around us, helps us to live in right relationship with others, to help heal to help put the world back into its proper fullness. And so now as we close, I want you to look once more at that piece of paper in front of you. Maybe you've been taking notes or doing some holy doodles. But if you have the space, I want to encourage you to write down what it is that you feel God is inviting you to as I read our passage one last time. My child, do not forget my teaching, but let your heart keep my commandments, for length of days and years of life and abundant welfare they will give you. Do not let loyalty and faithfulness forsake you. Bind them around your neck, write them on the tablet of your heart. Then you will find favor and high regard in the sight of God and of people. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not rely on your own insight. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. What is it that God is inviting you to this morning? How does that word or phrase invite you into a deeper relationship with God? Take a few moments just to reflect and focus on your breathing. If it helps, write down what it is you're feeling and what you feel this invitation is. Let's pray. God, who continues to give life, we thank you for the ways that you continue to pursue us and invite us into a relationship with you. Would you give us the courage this day and this week to live into the fullness of this truth? As we seek you, would we seek justice, love, and mercy in the flourishing of our neighbors? As we think about what it means to live a good life, a blessed life, would we remember that a full life is more than just individual pursuits? Would you light the way as we make our way towards your one great road? Amen.
Please stay to join us as we